Hi folks, this is Jay. Hope you're okay today. It's good to see you. We're going to be just thinking about is the Bible rooted in history? Is there any other sort of ancient historical documents when the Bible's talking about historical scenarios, people, places? Are there sources outside the Bible that confirm what the Bible's saying? So I just want to give you an example of Flavius Josephus, who was a Jewish historian who sort of lived from about AD 37 to 101 possibly. He mentions John the Baptist and Herod in his Antiquities book, Book 18, Chapter 5, Part 2. Now, some of the Jews thought that the destruction of Herod's army came from God, and that very justly as a punishment of what he did against John, that was called the Baptist, for Herod slew him, who was a good man, and commended the Jews to exercise virtue both as to righteousness towards one another and piety towards God, and so to come to baptism, for that the washing with water would be acceptable to him if they made use of it, not in order to the putting away or the remission of some sins only, but for the purification of the body, supposing it still that the soul was thoroughly purified beforehand by righteousness. So one writer's put, note, there is a dispute as to the reliability of Josephus' accounts. However, there is no textual manuscript reason for doubting them, since the extant Greek manuscripts all agree with the text in question. And I think the person who's said that is correct. Flavius Josephus again mentions Jesus in Antiquities, Book 18, Chapter 3, Verse 3. Now there was about this time Jesus a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works. A teacher of such men received the truth with pleasure. Now there is a debate whether some bits have been added or not, but it's generally, I think, fair to surmise that there are some elements about Jesus there that most historians would agree that Josephus is talking about Jesus. Flavius Josephus mentions James, the brother of Jesus, in Antiquities, Book 20, Chapter 19. Festus was now dead. Albinus was but upon the road, so he assembled a Sanhedrin of judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others. So Josephus mentions the brother of Jesus, James. Flavius Josephus mentions Ananias the high priest, who was mentioned in Acts chapter 23, verse 2. Now, as soon as Albinus was come to the city of Jerusalem, he used all his endeavours and care that the country might be kept in peace, and this by destroying many of the Sicarii. But as for the high priest Ananias, he increased in glory every day, etc., etc. Then we have Tacitus, Roman historian, AD 55 up to AD 117, mentions Christus, who is Jesus. Consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of the procurators, Pontius Pilatus. Then we have Thales Seca, AD 52, talks about the eclipse of the sun. Thales wrote a history of the eastern Mediterranean world from the Trojan War to his own time. His writings are only found as citations by others. Julius Africanus, who wrote about AD 221, mentioned Thales' account of an eclipse of the sun. On the whole world there pressed a most fearful darkness. When you remember Jesus dying on a cross, there was a darkness, and the rocks were rent by an earthquake, and many places in Judea and other districts were thrown down. This darkness Thales, in the third book of his history, calls, appears to me without reason an eclipse of the sun. Pliny the Younger mentioned Christ. Pliny was a governor of Bithynia in Asia Minor. Pliny wrote 10 books, the 10th around AD 120, 112. He says that the Christians, were in the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light, when they sang alternate verses as a hymn to Christ as to our God, and bound themselves by a solemn oath. The significance of that, he's writing about what Christians believed in 80 AD. Very significant. The Talmud, on the eve of the Passover, Yeshua was hanged. For 40 days before the execution took place, a herald went forth and cried, "He is going forth to be stoned, because he was practiced sorcery and enticed Israel to apostasy." So that's about Jesus. If you read Galatians 3:13, he says, "Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, Cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree." And then Lucian 120 to 180 mentions Jesus, Greek writer and rhetorician. The Christian you know worship a man to this day, the distinguished personage who introduced their novel rites and was crucified on that account. So, sort of antiquity historians and thinkers also refer to historical things that happened in the New Testament. Alright.